Welcome to the program Hidden Treasures, a program intended to clarify the doubts that come to our mind when we read the Holy Bible or when we listen to the passages from the Holy Bible. We have with us a very renowned Bible scholar and a scripture professor, Reverend Dr. Michael Karimattum. Of course, through the past episodes, we have been very familiar with him and we have asked questions and we have enlightened through the explanation which he has given us already. And we continue with yet another episode. Father, a hearty welcome to this program. And here we are with yet another question. We continue on the line that we have had so far, probably the past two episodes. We start with the Eucharist and we also touched upon the crucifixion, the sacrifice, manifestation of ultimate love. On the other side, sin is worst because God himself is crucified. Now we have a question concerning the history part of it. Of course, nowhere we find this. Very unique to Christianity, if you take it that way. Or to say, how do we fix in our mind all these things happened as a historical fact and the impact of that? Or why should it come to that historical event? So many things are in connection with that, but however, we focus on the history part of it.
It is true, Babu. The one thing about Christianity, we are basing ourselves in a very historical fact, event, a person. Whatever you may say, you cannot deny the historicity of the person. How he lived. There are people who say Jesus did not die. When the time came from the crucifixion, he somehow escaped. Or he pretended to be dead and he was buried, and in the cool of the
night,
yes. Of the tomb, he became alive and he walked back and came to Kashmir. These are all stories. Nobody would believe it. But one thing, you cannot deny the historical fact that this person called Jesus of Nazareth lived and he died a most shameful death. And this was somehow calculated murder, you would say. Why did people do that? What is the wrong he did? So the Gospels, so we see the Gospel, the four accounts of Jesus' life, as well as the first disciples, see in the Acts of the Apostles and some letters of Paul. Paul is the most reliable person in this. All speak about the cross crucifixion. And the three synoptic Gospels speak about Jesus' life, public life. Matthew and Mark also about the infancy. And John gives a meaning and interpretation of this life. But all come to this event, death of Jesus on the cross. Why? Why did he die? Why was he killed? Because he did not do anything wrong. He only loved. So why a person, such a philanthropist who did nothing wrong, why was he killed? And why did the people shout against him, crucify him? So I think we need a survey of the life. Why, how did he live? What was the situation he was in? What was the faith of the people? So unless you have some background, you will not be able to understand. So we have seen the theological part of it, the prophecy, etc. But when it is being lived out in concrete, see, Jesus was born maybe year 4 or 6 BC, because there is a kind of misunderstanding about the beginning of the AD BC, because during the 6th century when they wanted to make a new calendar, they wanted to start not from the beginning of the Rome, as they called the AUC, Aburbe Condita, that was how the Romans calculated, from the foundation of Rome. So that was the calendar. Now they wanted to make a new calendar, and to start with, the history starts with the beginning, the birth of Jesus, considered as a 0 year. And go back, you call the before Christ, and then go forward, that is as the AD Anno Domini. This was, but now people have changed it to AC, the common era, and before the common era, whatever is it. So BC means before Christ, AD means after death of Christ. After the Anno Domini, not after the death. So 0 point is the birth of Jesus, considered as the changing. It's a dividing history, past and present. Now, That is not the very important thing. Let us leave the infancy and etc. So with the public ministry here starts, Mark starts with the baptism of Jesus and also John the Baptist. John, the Gospel of John speaks about the baptism, etc. So what did Jesus do? So most of his activities are related to healing, various types of healing. People who were sick, various types of sickness, blind, deaf, and
bleeding,
also paralyzed,
crippled, withered hand.
So there is a series of healing, all types of healing. And then another side you have what you call the exorcism, because many
Casting
of the
out
diseases
demons.
were considered to be caused by the possession of a demon, and by casting the demon out, he was healed. So Jesus had the healings, the casting out demons. Then you have the natural miracles, multiplication of bread, changing water into wine, etc. And more, it comes to the resurrection, the raising the dead. So these are the signs. Why did people object to it? Why could they? Now see how people understand. When Jesus was healing, by a word, they considered it as a breaking of the Sabbath. Because for the Jews, Sabbath was the most important law. The importance of Sabbath came into existence, so to say, during the exile. When Jerusalem was destroyed, people were in exile in Babylon. They had nothing to manifest themselves as an external sign as the people of God. So they emphasized the use of Sabbath. On the Sabbath day, you shall not work. All other laws, circumcision was not visible. So the only one visible way of affirming your faith was observance of Sabbath. So from the 6th century onwards, the Sabbath became the most important law. And there is a shift in the understanding of the Sabbath. For example, if you go through the book of Exodus in chapter 20, there is a list of 10 commandments. And there the Sabbath, the law of Sabbath is presented. You shall rest on the day of Sabbath, because God rested on the 7th day, so you also shall sanctify the day, the Sabbath. So you shall do no work. And the book of Deuteronomy, it is said, you were slaves in Egypt, so God gave you rest, so you shall rest. The same law interpreted in two ways. So what is important here? Is it rest important or not working? So if you take the Genesis account and the Exodus account of the 10 Commandments, you see not working is more important. You shall not do any work. And then they asked, what is work? What type of work are you allowed to or not? It's about 39 works had been identified by the lawyers. So one of these was healing. So you shall, a medical practice. So you shall have some medical practice only insofar as to keep the person alive till the end of the Sabbath. So if you have such a critical situation, you can do something only to make him survive for better treatment. So none of the Persians whom Jesus healed was in such a critical category. Yeah. So when Jesus healed the people on the Sabbath, they thought it is a breaking of the law. So he doesn't observe the law. That is the first thing against. Another work was not allowed is the reaping and cooking and all those. So Jesus with his disciples, they were hungry all the time because
they plucked corns.
So they were plucking corns and eating, and the Pharisees came and said, look, your disciples are doing something which is forbidden. They are doing all this work. So Jesus said, did you not read what David did, etc. So then he goes on to say, that is where the challenge comes. Sabbath is for men. Don't sacrifice men for Sabbath. The Son of Man is also master of Sabbath. So Jesus somehow puts himself as an authentic interpreter of the law. So they consider him as above the law. So who do you think you are? So you can manipulate the law? Again, casting out demons. The casting out demons, there is a common practice there. So there is exorcism. Jesus was not the only exorcist. There had been also other exorcists. And then people come to believe, say, he is exorcising. He is casting out demons by the help of the prince of demons, Beelzebul. So then, so accusation that Jesus is in league with Satan. See, Jesus tells how is it possible a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. So he was accused of healing on Sabbath, breaking the Sabbath. He was accused of being in legion with the Satan. Third, the paralysis. Jesus was teaching, and somebody brought a paralytic person carrying by the four people, and they could not take him inside. So they removed the roof and put him down. And instead of healing, Jesus said, "Son, your sins are forgiven." Who can forgive sins except God? Who can forgive sins? What do you think you are? See how Jesus responds. And it's a very interesting question. What is easier? Is it easier to say,
get up,
your sins are forgiven, or get up, take your bed and go home? As a child, I used to count the letters, which is easier. But later I understood this is something different. So which is easier, to forgive sins or to make a paralyzed person stand up and walk with a word? A word that forgives sins, a word that gives life, which is easier? They don't say anything. Because nothing is easy. And then Jesus tells him, it's a sign. Suppose I tell this man, you get up and walk home. Then will you believe that I have the power to forgive sins? So it was a challenge, they don't answer. If they say no, then why? Can you do that? No. So if you say yes, then they have to accept the fact that he has the power to forgive sins. And everybody agreed that only God can forgive sins. So Jesus is very clearly, evidently manifesting that he has the power to forgive sins by performing this miracle. So this miracle itself becomes a board of contention. It becomes an object of opposition. And not only that, it goes on. Another situation, for example, he was in the synagogue. And he sees a woman, a bent woman who had been bent for a long time, carrying a stick, and called, come over. And Jesus brings her to the front, which is forbidden. The woman should not overstep the border. And Jesus brings her to the stage and puts his hand on her and says, "You are released from your bondage. Stand up." And immediately she stands straight and shouts. The synagogue president is furious. He has done so many things wrong. First of all, he allowed the woman to overstep the limits. Second, he touched the woman in public. Third, he healed her. And the last of all, the woman shall never speak in public. Now she is shouting. So he is furious. And then tells them, well, you have 6 days in the week where you can be healed, but not on the Sabbath day. But then Jesus accuses him, tells him, why? If you have an ox or an ass, something that will you not untie it and get to the food? Should not this daughter of Abraham, who was bound by Satan for 18 years, shall she not be released on the day of Sabbath? So one after the other, the performing of Jesus somehow was making difficult for the people to understand. People were happy, but the leaders were really somehow annoyed, disturbed, and angry. Gradually you see a movement taking place. You call it the Jesus movement, you could say. Another thing, lepers. A leper is a person who is considered, who is declared as a leper unclean by the priest. If you have some spots on your skin, and if it doesn't go, you go to the priest, and the priest has to declare if it is a leprosy krankheit or not. Leprosy. And then if you are declared a leper, then you have to be out. Anyone who comes near you will be unclean. And so there's a lot of leprosy there. Not all skin diseases as we have it now. For them, whatever has to do with the skin was leprosy. And now comes a person. That's the Gospel of Mark chapter 1. A person comes, a leper, comes to Jesus and tells him, Master, if you will, you can make me clean. And Jesus feels compassion, stretches out his hand and touches him. It's not only just touching, maybe it's a hugging. He said, and then I will be cleaned. And he's cleaned. Immediately, they are surprised. You are somehow changing the whole fabric of the society. The women are being liberated. They are crossing the borders. The lepers are being, the clean, unclean, the law, the basic of our religious law is being broken. So the law that made people clean and unclean, people who were under domination or not, so this kind of religious laws are thoroughly being broken. People are happy, but the leaders are afraid. So this goes on. This goes on to say, finally, when it comes to the conclusion, they tried to check him. They tried to intimidate the people. Don't go with him. If anybody agrees or acknowledges Jesus, he will be excommunicated. And then they started spreading rumors against Jesus, that he is a Samaritan, that he is a sinner, public sinner, he is a drunkard, he is a friend of prostitutes, and he is in league with Satan, and he is mad. Blasphemy. So, character assassination. First, they tried to alienate the people, then the character assassination, then they come to kill. And this becomes much more evident. When see the whole religious fabric on which their religion was built was being shaken. The laws are being broken. And finally, when he comes to Jerusalem, and the triumphal entry to Jerusalem and what he did in the temple, that is unforgivable. So he somehow makes the whip and chases the people, throwing down the tables. So this was a kind of violent act against the existing religion. So, do you want to destroy the temple? That's what it is. What sign, what authority do you have? What sign do you give that you have the authority to do this? And then, the accusation that came against Jesus, this man said he will destroy the temple and build it up in 3 days. Jesus said, you destroy this temple. They did not understand what that temple means. In fact, they did not understand who this person is. On the one hand, he is very peace and meek, loving, caring. On the other hand, he is so intransigent. When you come to Matthew 23, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites. So how the conflict is coming sharper and sharper. And especially after the triumphal entry and cleansing of the temple, this became a brutal confrontation. Beginning, Jesus was in Galilee, they were observing, they were making all these manipulations, they tried to alienate the people, then they did not succeed, then they decided to arrest him, they could not arrest him, they were afraid of the people, and finally the Sanhedrin meets and they want to do away with him because they believe he is a blasphemer, that they have decided, a false prophet. And they say, a false prophet who somehow disunites, separates, scatters the people, makes division. In fact, already at the beginning, his beginner said, this child is to be a sign of contradiction. So where he comes, there is division. And Jesus himself said, I have come to bring sword, not peace. Do you think I have come to bring peace? No, sword. So there will be two in a family, 2 against 3, and 3 against 2. So, and that is happening. And Jesus said, anybody who follows me will have to renounce everything. You should be ready to take up cross. So Jesus sees in front of him the cross. He didn't do any violence, but he was advising, he was telling the disciples that if you want to follow me, you should have no bondage here. Abandon everything, your father, your mother, your family, and be ready to die for the sake. So then he starts, the journey to Jerusalem is starting somehow. He sees also the cross in front of him, and this tells several times. Disciples did not understand. And then comes the final confrontation. He was arrested with the help of a disciple and put on trial. So we focus on that trial and put all this together. In the trial, so there's a religious trial, there's a political trial. The first religious trial, first done by Caiaphas and then the Annas, so etc. So the religious trial, they brought many accusations against him that he was breaking the Sabbath, that he was breaking laws of cleanliness and etc. and many other things, blasphemy. And then finally, he would destroy the temple. So finally, the high priest puts one question, and the decisive question. I ask you in the name of God, name of the Most High, that is the swearing. Are you the Son, are you the Messiah, the Son of God? That is a decisive question. And he said, I am. And immediately he tears his cloth. Why? Jesus said, I am. You said so. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of God and coming with the clouds. So to make sure that he is identifying himself as a divine person. So they could not take it. So what do you mean? Are you the creator, Yahweh? He did not say that. But equivalent to God. That's what he was asking. Are you the Son of God? For example, the kings were the Son of God. But this is something more. So the absolute monotheistic religion of the Jews and the people who were the custodians of this monotheistic faith, they could not take a person like this. Whatever he may have done or not done, this is unpardonable. So this is blasphemy. They will say only a false prophet would do that. How can it say this man, this carpenter from Nazareth, a miserable creature, he is Son of God, equal to God? How can? They had all the proofs, but they cannot take. For example, the death and burial and the raising of Lazarus after 3 days. Many believed in him, but then is considered as sorcery. So they had all the evidence, but they could not change their faith because it's so radical, totally unheard of thing. That is one thing even today. Who can say that God has a son? That is, the Quran would say, or the Muslims would say, he is not born and he doesn't procreate. God has no son, God is no father. And Jesus said, I am the. And then he applies the prophecy of the Son of Man in Daniel. In Daniel, the prophecy of the Son of Man was related first to the people of God and then the Messiah. So putting together the prophecy of Daniel and Psalm, you see the Son of Man seated at the right hand, equivalent to, and coming with the clouds as a judge. So Jesus is somehow affirming with biblical quotations that he is equal to God. That is the basic reason. That is why he was come. Then he tears the garment. So when you hear a blasphemy, you tear his garment. That is already a sign of condemnation to death. A false prophet should be put to death. So Jesus is condemned as the false prophet. Jesus is condemned as a false prophet according to the law of the Jews. So here is the tragedy of humanity, or this is the inevitable consequence of God appearing as man. They could not. So there's only one thing. Either you change your mind and accept this, what Jesus is telling, or consider him as a false prophet. So they could understand him only as a false prophet. All the other signs Jesus performed were not enough for them. But on the other hand, the people were not so much sophisticated in theology that they were ready to. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. But they did not consider him as a God. They considered him as a son of David coming as a king. Nobody could understand who Jesus was. Even Peter said, Peter's confession we have in 3 forms. In Mark, he said, you are the Christ. In Luke, you have the Christ of God. And in Matthew, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. That is a post-Easter confession. So not even the disciples understood who really Jesus is. A totally misunderstood person. On the one hand, he is so kind manifestation of God's compassion. On the other hand, he is such a rebel who considers himself, presents himself as God, a blasphemer. So that is one side, the religious side, why he was killed. A total misunderstanding. And the misunderstanding changes only after, and even now it is not completely changed. Then it had to go on the political side. I think we need some more time to go on the political side. Yeah. So on the religious side, whatever Jesus did, whatever Jesus said, was considered by the people as a compassionate manifestation of a compassionate God, but on the part of the religious authority, considered as a negation, as a denial, as a leading the people astray, as a false prophet. So he was condemned as a false prophet. He deserved to die. But they didn't have the authority to kill anybody legally, so they had to be handed over, and they had to find other reasons.
Father, as you explained, because there are two sides to this history part of it, that is the religious part and the political part of it. And we're dealing with the religious part of it. And all that he did, of course, was accepted by the people, and the manifestation was love and mercy and compassion. But that was not so with regard to the people, with the authorities, because for them it was a breaking of the law. Right from his healing and forgiveness of sin and raising the dead and intervening in the life of leper, cleansing him, everything was taken as to be breaking the law, which was not acceptable. That alone was that itself was building up a conflict. And then, as you explained, Father, for the people, he was a God of love manifested. For them, the authorities, it was a false God. A God who was in a different line, entirely opposed to what they thought it to be. Therefore, naturally, all the opposition and the plan thereof to get him away and do away with him. Of course, that was supported by, they could not execute naturally, as you said in the conclusion of this episode, this part. They need to have the political, approval and the legal side for that. That we will come to the next episode. Okay. As we listen to, we need to understand both the sides of this crucifixion, the religious side and how he is considered the breaker of a law and as a false God. Therefore, every reason to accuse him. And the other side is political reason, which we will come to the next episode. Thank you for being with us. If you have any questions concerning any passage from the Bible, please do write to us in the following address that you see on the screen. Until then, stay blessed. We will see you for the next episode, same day, same time. Thank you, Father. Thank you so much. Thank you.